Hey you guys, it's Dani. Welcome back to my channel. So I was perusing the YouTubes the other day and I found this really fun tag by Feeding Your Soul 1212, I believe. It is called I Got a Deck for That. And it has some really interesting prompts and I thought it was really fun, and I'm not even gonna lie, this took me far longer than I want to admit to pick out these decks. So there are 16 prompts. I have them here on my phone. I took a snapshot, that way I can read them out to you. And I have all my decks right here. This one was tough. I'll get into it as we go along because this one might take a while. So let's go ahead and start with the first prompt. So number 1 is a deck that represents your favorite movie genre. So for this one, I chose Terra Volatile. So thinking about this one, I found this one to be a little bit easy. Like, this one wasn't too hard because I like a plethora of things, but in general, I have an overall vibe for my movies as well. And I love kind of gritty, kind of mysterious horror, thriller. I love period pieces, and I love mysteries, and I love kind of witchy and dark, and I don't know, I just feel like this fits. If I saw a preview for a movie that showed any of these images, I'd be like, oh, hell yeah. And that's what I thought about when I thought about this, like, movie genre. I'm like, well, I like all kinds of stuff, but I do like an overall creepy vibe. And kind of a magical, what's happening, we have to figure something out. There seems to be some kind of creepy religious overtones to this, you know? I don't know. It just embodies everything I love in movies, as well as art and tarot. So I chose Terra Volatile for this one because it's just got everything. Rituals and mystery. Love that. Kind of reminds me of, like, oh, what is it? Is it The Secret? No, it's not The Secret Window. It's The Ninth Gate. Those kind of movies. Love that. So, Terra Volatile for my favorite movie genre. Now, this one was hard because I was trying to figure out, this is, number 2 is a deck that represents your favorite movie. So I'm like thinking. I'm like, oh my God, what's even my favorite movie? I just have so many. Like, I don't know, movies are hard for me to choose in the same way that music is hard for me to choose because, like, my love of all the things, right? From comedy to extreme horror, there is everything in between, in the same way that my music taste is from classical to heavy metal. There is nothing that I won't listen to. So I talked to Jacob and I was like, okay, what is my favorite movie? And he was like, The Sandlot. And I was like, yeah, I guess it is. It's been my favorite movie since I was a kid. Matter of fact, I tell the story all the time. Like, I used to rent this movie so much that, like, my parents would not allow me to rent it anymore. Because I would watch it over and over and over again. And it's just one of my favorites. And I'm like, what in the world could I use to represent The Sandlot? I'm like, there is nothing. I have nothing that would represent that. And then I thought, wait a second, Hilda. Because it kind of has that, like, frolicking summer vibes, right? Just kind of doing all the things footloose and fancy free in the summertime. I mean, it's got the burlaps, it's got those like vintage vibes, you know. And so I thought, wait, this does it. Hilda represents The Sandlot for me as my favorite movie. Adorable. She gives me the same feeling of just like the goofiness. She's got that red hair because we love ham, right? And so this really just jumped out at me. Last minute, I was like, I'll never do it. I'll have to pick another movie. But I got it. I got it. So cute. So that is my Sandlot pick for that one. Okay, number 3, a deck that represents your favorite color. So again, I was like, I kind of have a palette. I don't have like, I'm like, I love black and I love this and I love that. And then I was like, wait, green. Duh. I always gravitate towards green. So I didn't just choose tarot. I do have, or is this my only one? This might be my only oracle that I chose. Dun, dun, tarot, 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 tarot. This is my only oracle that I chose. And that's the Woodland Wardens, because it has all the greens. And it has just one of my favorite color palettes in general. And it has a possum in it. Sorry, my phone is going off. But it has all these beautiful greens in it. Tans, oranges, blacks. Ugh. It's all the favorites. It's like my favorite color palette and some of my favorite greens. I love those like brownish highlighted colors and then just the deep dark green on the back. So this would probably represent my favorite color as well as like my favorite color palette in the Woodland Wardens. I thought it was like the perfect thing for this. Okay, number 4, a deck that represents your childhood self. So this one I was really excited about because this really does represent a big part of my childhood. So I chose Wisdom of the Pooh. Because when I was a kid, I lived in a world of make-believe, number 1. I was constantly in a state of imagination. I was playing. I was an only child until I was almost 14 years old. So I learned how to play by myself, right? And so I lived in this kind of world of imagination. I played with my stuffed animals, with my Barbies, with my dolls, with like all the things, right? And I used to watch the Disney version of Winnie the Pooh. I had them on VHS. And then I used to watch The Adventures of Winnie the Pooh that used to come on, was it like Saturday morning or whatever? And so I remembered having that in the back of my mind, like how much I loved that. So this was a perfect representation of kind of that childhood self in that world of make-believe. And it's so soft and lovely. Those vibrant colors. There's just a lot of nostalgia that comes with this one. And then I used to watch it when my little brother came along into my teenage years. I used to put it on for him. I used to watch it with him. I used to read the little book to him. We had a huge collector's book of the stories, and I used to read that to him too. He has it now for his kids. So this definitely represents a part of my childhood for me. So adorable. It just holds that simplicity and that magic and that playfulness and that world of make-believe. Piglet. This is so cute. Oh my god. All the feels. All the feels. Up next, a deck that represents your teenage self. So I went back and forth with this one, but I ultimately decided that a cult following tarot deck represents my childhood self right now. Like, when I think of the pieced together album style art of this deck, I think about my teenage years. I think about the music that I was listening to, the things that I was watching, you know, the music videos on MTV, my friends, and, you know, high school years. Like, this represents that wholeheartedly for me. It's like a whole vibe. It even represents a lot of the collage style stuff I was doing artistically as a kid. So it's like, this is just that teenage angst, rock and roll music, and funky things, right? Teenage Dani would have gobbled this deck up, I'm telling you. It's so cool, man. Yeah, album art and music videos, like, that's what I see in this. So much. Love it. Teenage Dani approved. Okay, so what follows with number 6 is a deck that represents your adult self. So from the place where I was as a teenager to the place where I am now, almost 40, month or so left, it's crazy how similar of a space I'm back in. But there is a bit more folk magic. There is a bit more heritage. There is a bit more ancestry that has crept back in. And there's a little bit more towards the witchier, creepier side than I even was as a teenager. So I chose the cursed Auguaries. I always trip up that word, because I feel like this kind of represents the space that I'm in as an adult right now. This is why I love thinking about decks in this way, because I remember when we had, this kind of reminds me of the hashtag that we had, the decks for decades, where for each decade of your life thus far, you choose a deck that kind of represents that space and time. And it was so impactful and so powerful, and it's so crazy how looking back every couple of years on stuff like that, how it changes. The decks change, the feelings change, because I feel like we constantly look back through a new lens now that we've lived more life, right? And so that's what really sparked my interest in this tag, because I love doing stuff like that. So anyway, I found that this deck more so represents a space that I'm in as an adult right now, where I'm digging into that like grounded, earthy feeling. These are pips. There is a simplicity to my life now. I feel like there are things that are shifting and changing. And they're getting more simple, and they're getting more primal and gritty. I don't know. It's like I'm going into a space that feels more raw and real and gritty. And so I found that this deck in particular really represents that for me. And I'm not mad at it. You know, I'm not mad at it. What is that? There's something going around in Reels, TikToks, whatever the hell they are, that talks about you can't be liked and be a local folklore. I'm okay with being the folklore. I'm okay with being creepy and weird, and I'm okay with looking at things from a different angle and doing my own thing now. It's definitely been an interesting road to 40 thus far. And so this is where I feel like I am as an adult right now. Okay, number 7. A deck that represents your favorite song or music genre. So again, this is the one that I was like kind of back and forth with for my teenage self and the music genre, because they definitely play a huge part, because music played such a huge part in my life as a teenager. That's when I really found that kind of niche where I really started exploring music and genres and styles and all the things that come along with it. And so I was like, what's kind of my favorite music right now? Again, everything is such a huge spectrum with me. But I always go back to that kind of grunge, rock, alternative, 90s style. That's where I'm at. I listen to Nirvana and Counting Crows, Pearl Jam, and then I went into like Tool and Marilyn Manson and Hole and all of these kind of gritty bands. And so I thought the best thing to represent that would be the Black Lily Tarot, because it does remind me of that kind of grunge and rock and alternative. You know, I remember watching videos for Bush and Tool and all of those bands that kind of go towards that like grittier style. When I think of these images, I often think about the Live Through This whole album, because of the kind of slip 90s vibe that this has. Like, I remember, you know, seeing these like riot girls on stage wearing nothing but, you know, lacy slips and, you know, messed up hair and crazy things like this, you know? It has those grungy vibes. It has some punk energy, some riot girl vibes, and I'm here for it. I am here for it. Ooh, knocking stuff down. Such a great deck. So I would definitely say this deck represents that kind of music for me. 90s era grunge, rock, alternative kind of style, going into like punk. Yeah. Number 8, a deck that represents your favorite book genre. So, if you've listened to my book videos, you will know a lot of times I like things that are pretty intense, sometimes disturbing, scary, all the things. And I thought the perfect deck to represent that would be the Lubanko Tarot. Because it's intense, and it's creepy. It's mysterious. Also has some like period style pieces in there, which is also a plus. It has a fantasy vibe. I love fantasy as well. It kind of really embodies like all my taste in books, really. Such intensity in this. And then, of course, it goes into a more fiery place. Look at that. If this was a book cover, I'd be interested. Trying to find something like, check this out. Look at that. This actually reminds me of a book I recently read. Mouthful of Blackened Teeth or something similar to that. It literally reminds me of that book. So yeah, this is a definite great representation of the type of books I read in general. Including some of the, I'm going to kind of, intensity that is shown on some of these cards. Again, full representation of the type of books that I read. Ooh. This is just such a great deck. Oh my gosh. Look at this. So intense. So interesting. Emperor. Love this Two of Cups. Obsessed with this devil. Another representation of like the taboo style, like little short novellas that I read. Perfect representation of that. Yeah, this is just, it's a great deck and definitely flows with my book style. Okay, number 9, a deck that represents your favorite TV show, past or present. We all know that I sometimes like to cheat, and it's because I can't decide. And so I had to think for a really long time, and I couldn't find the one that I wanted, but then I realized that I did have one that represented that, but then I had already chosen another one, so that's why we have 2. I'm making excuses for the fact that I also just want to talk about both of these anyway. So first, I will talk about kind of like my past into current favorite, and that is Keeping Up Appearances. Please tell me y'all know this. This is from the 90s. It is with Hyacinth Bouquet, spelled B-U-C-K-E-T. And when I think of Hyacinth, like, it's to the point I own the series on DVD. I have watched the entire series a million times. I never get tired of it. It is wholesome and funny, and I love everything about it. And I was like, oh my god, what kind of deck would represent Hyacinth, right? Like, what would represent that to me? And so I thought she would never have anything as vulgar as people on her cards. Never, never, never. And it would definitely have to be something that would flow with her candlelight suppers. So I thought the Little Bird Tarot would be perfect to represent Hyacinth, keeping up appearances. I mean, it's no Royal Doulton with the hand-painted periwinkles, but it is tasteful. And so this also kind of reminds me of, you know, her wallpaper that she's always trying to protect. And so it took me a while, but then I was like, oh my god, duh, Little Bird Tarot. That would be perfect for keeping up appearances. But in the meantime, trying to think about that, I was like, what else do I absolutely love? And honestly, I am one of those adults that have never grown out of animation. Now my animation looks a little different ish. I say that, not really. Since I was a teenager, I watched things like South Park and The Simpsons, Futurama, King of the Hill, things like that. And right now, my obsession is Bob's Burgers. And so I chose the Art of Adventure Tarot because this kind of reminds me of Bob's Burgers. It's quirky. It's got that kind of noodly animation. Again, still kind of flows with that same kind of, I used to say it reminds me of the Futurama. And it does. But that and Bob's Burgers and all those fun adult animation shows, if you will. So I thought it would be fun to also talk about Bob's Burgers and say this deck. And it does have like the kind of sailor theme, which kind of reminds me of the wharf. Kind of strange and funny. It's got the TVs. There feels like there's so many like hidden jokes in this deck, and that's how I feel about shows like Bob's Burgers. Like, I love those little like subtle jabs, right? The subtle humor in the background. It's a favorite of mine. I dig it. It's funny, as dark as I love my movies and my books, my TV shows, I want to laugh. I do. I want to laugh. I want to have fun. So yeah. The Art of Adventure. Number 10. A deck that represents your favorite pastime or hobby. So, I like to do art. I love mixed media art. So, what represents that for me? My art. Mystic Masters. This is my hobby. This is my pastime. This is what I love doing. Tarot and art. Mixed media, mark making, painting, inking, digital art, art of all kinds. And Mystic Masters is the exact representation of that. It's like every time, it's so crazy because every time I look through my deck, every time I use it, even though, as strange as it is, like, I handpicked these images, I created upon them, I added everything to it myself, and yet I still find depth in the images, and I think that's what really speaks towards mixed media art in general and why I love it so much. Not just my deck, I'm talking any sort of mixed media. I find that there's always something deeper, you know? Because there's so many layers to look through, you know? That's why I like collage art. That's why I like stuff like that, because I like the messiness of it. That's why I like junk journals. And just that kind of chaotic style. Because I like the layers, if that makes sense. So yeah. My hobby. Okay. Number 11, a deck that represents your favorite holiday or dream holiday destination. So for me, dream holiday, I am a huge history nerd. So I was like, ooh, anything where I can go to like historic museums or palaces or castles or whatever. And so I decided that that would best be represented, whoop, come on, let go, by the revival art. The opulence of it just kind of reminds me of those old historic palaces and estate homes and all across Europe that we don't have things like that here in the States, you know, like going to Versailles or Hampton Court or, you know, these beautiful homes and palaces, museums, and just diving into history and art and architecture. I just felt like revival art kind of represents that for me, and like I would love to do an extended holiday to the UK and other parts of Europe to go and witness these things in real life. IRL. It just holds that artistic space of what I would imagine it would be like to stand in these places, to look at these pieces firsthand. Oh, gorgeous. That would definitely be a dream holiday for me. I'm such a nerd. I want to go and explore and learn and see all the things. I'm not one to just go and chill. Like, I'll do the beach because a lot of my family loves the beach. But I want a place where I can go. I want to go fouiller, okay? I want to go fouiller in all the things. I want to go and look and touch and see and experience, you know? So that would be my dream holiday, for sure. Okay, number 12, a deck to represent the decade you were born. So I found a perfect one because it was actually a show that was released or started the year after I was born, which was 1985. And so I thought it would be a pretty good representation of the 80s to have the Golden Girls. What's more 80s than the Golden Girls? Am I right? Look at that. Boom. This deck is so much fun. One of my friends gifted this to me. She had a party, a tea party for her mother's 70th birthday. And it was Golden Girls theme. And she said, "This is a party favor just for you." And I was so excited. It is fabulous. It's absolutely fabulous. And so 80s. I love the fact that Shady Pines is the tower. Obsessed. Dorothy for our swords. Roses in our cups. Blanche is in the pentacles. Sophia's in the wands. I love it so much. Fun and funky patterns. All of their outfits. Look at that. Look at that. You know what else this kind of reminds me of? Weekend at Bernie's. Had the same, like, tropical vibe. Was that in the 80s or was that into the 90s? I think that was still in the 80s, huh? Weekend at Bernie's. I used to watch that all the time. I had that on VHS too. And then people wonder why I'm morbid. I literally watched Weekend at Bernie's over and over and over again as a child, where two men walked around with a dead guy. And people wonder why I'm weird. Next. A deck that represents your favorite flower. My favorite flower. This, I love all the flowers. And so I thought long and hard, and I thought some of my favorite flowers are actually more like bushes and vines, you know? Like, I love ferns and greenery. I love ivy, trailing vines. I love blackberry bushes and thistles and wildflowers, kind of chaos, wild gardening. And the deck that reminded me the most of my favorite kind of flowers and gardens and things like that is Oak, Ash, and Thorn. Because it is so grounding and beautiful and full of nature. The forests, the meadows, the wildflowers, the vines, the trees, the mushrooms. I know it's not technically flowers, but wildflowers are flowers, and those are my favorite. I love cosmos and daisies. I love all the weird looking flowers like that come off of the thistles and dandelions and all those kind of things. And so I thought this would be perfect. My own little take on the flowers. All the like brambles and so beautiful. Night bloomers. berries and bushes and the trees. I just love it. All the wildflowers. Wild nature. Even has all the like watery lily pads and things of that nature in here. All the vines. Beautiful. Number 14, a deck that represents your favorite scent. So I thought about this. And I'm like, oh, I love the smell of old books, you know. I love the smell of, lavender and eucalyptus. And I love the smell of amber, I like a musky smell. And I like this. And then I really started to imagine, like, if I could bottle a smell, what would it be? And immediately I thought about an old record shop that I used to go into as a kid. There were a few, and most of them smelled the same, but this one in particular smelled like just the culmination of all the incense that they had along the wall. So like the patchouli, Nag Champa kind of smell, along with the smell of, old CDs and vinyl and paper and plastic, it had a smell. And I'm like, oh, I love that smell. Of just like incense and, as strange as it is, like nostalgia in music, right? And so what takes me there? The dang Olsen Dream Tarot. It takes me to those incense smelling record shops and record stores in the 90s. And if you're lucky, you can still find them today. And so when I see these, I think of places like Spencer's and, places in the mall that smelled like that too, It had all the incense sticks all hanging around. And it's like I can almost smell it when I look at this. Gosh, isn't this such a great deck? It's so strange. It's so funny. And, like, it definitely has a nostalgia feel for me. Like, I remember wearing all the little jewelry that had the smiley faces on it and things like that. All this style is coming back right now, which I think is wild. But I'm here for it. I'm not even going to act like I haven't bought me some stuff. I'm like, I had this as a kid. So great. But it definitely, like, it brings back those memories, and it's like I can smell it. I know what it smells like. Okay, these last two were so hard for me. So the last two, 15 and 16, is your favorite food and your favorite beverage. So my favorite food, I go through, listen, I'm so OCD when it comes to food sometimes, because I'll go through phases where I'm like, I want this all the time. For like months, sometimes years. And then I'm like, I now cannot eat this anymore. I have to find something else. So I'm like, oh my gosh, what am I kind of obsessed with right now? And there was more than one thing. I love, like, the squiggly noodles from Trader Joe's. They are an obsession for me. But I couldn't quite find anything that kind of really felt like that. But I'm also really obsessed. Like, I swear I eat it every single day. There's this stuff called, I'm probably going to butcher the name, so I'm going to do the best I can. It's called Sikio. It is a traditional, I don't even know, like a paste, a dip, I don't even know what exactly you would call it, but I'll tell you what it is. From this little town in Mexico, some chefs showed us how to make it when we went on our cruise and we were in Cozumel. We went to this house on the beach, and it was all local people who ran this place and local chefs, and they showed us how to make this. And so it is roasted tomatoes and onions. It has pumpkin seeds ground up, cilantro, lime, salt, and pepper. And it's this it's done with a mortar and pestle, so it is like ground in that way. And it is the most delicious thing I've ever had. It's so good. We tried it, we figured out how to make it, and I have made it over and over and over again. I eat it almost every single day on something in some way, shape, or form. And so I'm like, what could represent that for me right now? And I thought, Tarot Avatara. It reminds me of being in Mexico. It reminds me of this Sikio that we have. And supposedly it was, if I'm not mistaken, I may be wrong, but if I'm remembering correctly, what they told us, this is a very niche thing from this part, and it is Mayan or a form of Mayan. I can't quite remember. But anyway, it was amazing to get to learn how to make it and to taste it fresh on the beach, and then to be able to recreate it and have it over and over and over again. And I often love anything Mexican, Spanish, Tex-Mex, Cali-Mex, anything, everything. I love it all. I love it all. And so this deck represents that for me. My trip and learning about the culture and the delicious food in Mexico. I love this deck so much. Ugh, so beautiful. I haven't used this deck in a while, and I spent so much time with this deck. Reading through the guidebook and just kind of flowing with it. That pulling it back out, it's been a couple of months probably since I've messed with it, and I'm like, oh, it's time to get this back out. Look at that judgment. Oh, so good, so good. So my beverage was hard because I literally drink like water and coffee and tea. But I flavor my water. So I said, maybe I can find something that has like a watery flair with a little something extra. So for the last deck, I chose the Dame Darcy Mermaid Tarot. Because it's watery with a bit of a flair. with some flavoring in it. And so I thought this would be perfect for that. Some of my favorite things, I like to get the syrups to put in, and I also get the little packets. But some of my favorites are like tropical, so I like pineapple, mango. I love a good lemonade too. I love the Mermaid syrups that have like the coconut and all those tropical flavors in there. So I thought this was a great representation of like flavored water, if you will. I love this version of the Dame Darcy. I had one of the newer versions, and I really didn't get along with it very well. But this one has a more of, I don't know, it's like a deeper tone. I want to say this is the indie version. Or, well, they're all still indie, but like one of the first versions. Such a great deck. So yeah, those were my choices and my picks for this really fun hashtag. I got a deck for that. So I hope that you guys enjoyed going through these with me. I had a blast. These really made me think, and I had to try to pick things that would correspond. What makes me feel this way, or think of those things, or has the same vibe. This was really fun. So I'm excited to go and watch even more. I've noticed a couple people, and I added them to my watch list, that are doing them. I have had a blast watching and participating in this tag. So I put the original video down below, and feel free to let me know in the comments if you guys do them, because I would love to watch. So definitely let me know about that, and we will be back very soon. I'm sending you all my love. Mwah! Later, Gators.